Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about The Crown, Season 4, Episodes 4 and 5. If you want to see my videos on the full 3 episodes, please use the link above. So, inflation, unemployment, and civil unrest is pretty high, and Elizabeth points this out to Margaret Thatcher. This could be attributed to Margaret Thatcher's leadership and policies. And Thatcher wants to cut public spending, and they're having a normal political discourse, but then all of a sudden, Thatcher breaks down in tears, and she says that her son Mark has gone missing while driving his race car. And this kind of humanizes Margaret Thatcher too a bit. And now she also says Margaret says that Mark is her favorite child, which is something strange for a mother to say. You know, Philip says like, "Oh, every parent has a favorite child. Like his favorite is Anne," and Elizabeth doesn't really know who her favorite is. She doesn't really think she has a favorite. But I just thought it was kind of strange how Margaret Thatcher was like, "Oh yeah, he's my favorite." It's just kind of strange. Meanwhile, the Argentinians invade the Falkland Islands, so they basically just show up at the ports and say, "This is ours now." So there's a bit more conflicts there and stuff that Thatcher has to deal with. And so meanwhile, Elizabeth walks into one of her rooms with all of her like servants or secretaries and stuff. And it's funny because they all have to like stand up every time she walks in the room. Because like she walks in and they stand up, and then she like walks up or walks back in and they have to stand up again. I don't know, that's kind of funny. And she calls for each of her four children to have a meeting with her. And we get to see Prince Edward for the first time as an adult. And, you know, he just kind of comes off as a pretentious young asshole. But he also gets bullied for his status. So I guess I could sympathize with him, but I don't know, he just seems like a rich kid, you know, an asshole. And Elizabeth then meets with Anne, and they go horseback riding. And Anne tells her that she hates the journalists because they always follow her and they won't leave her alone. And she's also kind of jealous of Diana, or at least how the media perceives Diana, because Diana gets more positive attention in the media, and Anne is always seen as the grumpy one, even though Anne does humanitarian activism as well. Anne thinks she should get more credit for it, but she's always seen as the difficult one. And she's also very unhappy in her marriage, similar to Charles, which is probably why they all get divorced in the 90s. And so meanwhile, Mark Thatcher is found and he's brought back home, and we see him have dinner with his family, and he's being a asshole, like a rich young asshole, kind of like Prince Edward was. And Margaret being very favoritive towards Mark, and her daughter Carol is jealous. Since Margaret has a difficult relationship with her mother in the past, that means that she has difficult relationships with all of her female people she comes into contact with. You know, this is kind of hinted at earlier when she said she doesn't want to have any females in her Congress. I mean, her cabinet, and kind of has a shaky relationship with Elizabeth and a distant relationship with her daughter. So I feel like that all added together makes a lot of sense. So Queen Elizabeth then meets with Prince Andrew, you know, the pedophile one, who's in the Navy right now. And he's dating a girl who is in an underage porn film, and Elizabeth is kind of disapproving of that. Now, is this foreshadowing for his involvement with the Epstein scandal? I'm gonna say it is. You know, that guy's a real piece of shit. So, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of how he got started being a terrible person. And we see Diana is pregnant now, and her relationship with Charles is as terrible as ever. Because I guess she's been locking herself into her room this past week, and Charles has been screaming at her outside of her bedroom. And she's just been avoiding him and eating food and watching TV, kind of like me during quarantine. And Elizabeth meets with Charles, and he's building a garden and renovating his yard, and pretty much avoiding Diana at all costs. Still hanging out with Camilla though. Diana doesn't really like the countryside because she misses London and she misses her friends and family. And Elizabeth points out that Camilla lives only 15 minutes away from where his house is. But he says he only sees each other when he needs cheering up. But he's just a bad husband, you know? And Elizabeth says this herself. She tells him off for cheating on his pregnant, depressed wife. It's it's just terrible. I hate this guy. And Elizabeth also meets with her mother and her sister, and they drink together. But then she goes and talks to Philip, and she tells them that all of her children are lost and depressed, and she blames herself because she was a distant mother, and she didn't even know how to hold her children correctly because she was too focused on working on the country. So she never really had a big part in her children's lives, and she kind of feels guilty for that. But Philip reassures her and tells her that she's the best mother she could have been, and it was difficult to balance being a parent and leading the nation. And the episode ends with a fleet being sent to deal with the Argentinians, which leads us into episode 5, which is the one where Michael Fagan breaks into Elizabeth's bedroom. And we get to see a lot of Michael Fagan's history and stuff. He was an unemployed, divorced, pathetic man, and he's very poor, and his wife wouldn't let him see his kids. And he wants to talk to the politicians about this, but they don't really care about his problems. And one of the politicians jokingly tells him to talk to the Queen about it, which is kind of funny, but he didn't know that Michael Fagan was going to take that literally. So Fagan breaks into Buckingham Palace not once, but twice. So that means that they should have listened to Thatcher about enhancing security. His sad patheticness kind of reminds me of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker from that movie last year. I don't know, is anybody else getting that vibe? It kind of reminded me of that. Meanwhile, Thatcher and her team defeated the Argentinians and saved the Falkland Islands. So they're celebrating because they won. But Fagan easily breaks in a second time, and this time he actually gets to talk to the Queen. By the way, these security guards suck at watching the monitors. Like, how inconvenient is that? That, like, as soon as one of them stands up and then the other one sits down, like, both of them don't look at him walk in. I feel like that was way too convenient. But anyway, Fagin gets into the Queen's bedroom and he wakes her up, and she's, like, terrified, because he broke into her bedroom. I think anybody would be. And he just wants to talk to her about his problems. And nobody could hear her cry for help because of a inconvenient vacuum that also happened to be playing at the time. So he does the Festivus errands of grievances, and she says she can't help with any political matters, and problems usually sort themselves out, which I think is a good lesson to use even in today's problems. Things eventually sort themselves out. And it was nice how she stayed calm and kind during this, even though she was terrified. I feel like that was smart as well, because she didn't know what he could do. This man's obviously mentally unstable, but she dealt with it very well. And Margaret Thatcher says that, like, we definitely need more security, so she puts more security around Buckingham Palace. I'm like, it's about time. So Elizabeth isn't a big fan of Thatcher's victory parade, because after she defeated the Argentinians, Margaret Thatcher had a victory parade. But I think if anybody should say this, it shouldn't be you, because Elizabeth had a big birthday parade at the beginning of the episode, so I feel like Elizabeth's being a little bit hypocritical. But, whatever. So that's the end of the episode. I very much enjoyed it. I like Olivia Colman's acting as Elizabeth. She's very good. I also liked Michael Fagan's acting. Whoever played him did a very good job. I feel very bad for Diana, and Prince Charles is still an asshole. And Prince Andrew is he's definitely even worse of an asshole. So there's a lot of bad people in this show, a lot of good people, just like real life. So I'm going to give episode 4 a B and episode 5 a B+. They're both very good episodes, but I think I preferred episode 5 just because of the Michael Fagan thing. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope everybody has a nice day. Everybody stay safe and peace.